$2 trillion gone. That's how much value software stocks have lost this year because Wall Street is convinced that AI just killed SaaS. If you don't know what SaaS is, it's software as a service. It's paying for subscriptions for software, such as the Microsoft 365 suite and things of that nature. The demos are everywhere. One prompt and Claude now spits out a working Notion clone, or they have like authentication all set up. They'll spin up some sort of financial software. The demos are everywhere. So that's it, right? Time to cancel the subscription, fire up all the agents, get your codexes and your Claudes and everything going. SaaS is dead, except the companies that are supposedly dying are actually still growing. Salesforce lost a quarter of its value this year so far, while signing a $5.5 billion government contract. So something certainly does not add up. So here's the thing. We want to talk about how posting these demos is not an actual product. You can't just go to Claude and be like, make me everything that Notion is and ever was, and boom, there it is. It feels more like a demo. It is not an not the real Notion, the thing that's been QA'd and constructed and updated over years and years and years. And there's many other examples other than Notion and many other examples other than Salesforce as well. Potentially the scariest chart of 2026 is measuring fear and not revenue. So this is the $2 trillion panic over AI-created clones of popular SaaS products. Mike, you actually are the one that wrote up this episode, and I'm going to pass it to you shortly. But if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And if you want to help out not only yourself, but us as well, you can net yourself up to 20% off a Scrimba Pro plan. And you can find the link to do that in the show description and in the show notes with full details on how it works in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. So Mike, like I said, you wrote up this episode. You've been doing sort of the research on this. And we have quite a stacked show note. We're not going to be going through everything in the show note, but I will be including it in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com if you want to see some quotes and some links to some sources, other things like that. But on the screen right now, if you're watching the video version, we have the chart for year to date for Salesforce Incorporated. And it's a bit of a downward trajectory in general. So Mike, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, for sure. So this kind of came up on my radar probably a few months ago now, like 3 to 6 months even, where this started to actually be talked about. And for the most part, it was a good conversation. I never really gave any bearing to it because I thought it would recover. But it's been such a long time now, like you can see the year-to-date chart that we're seeing here, that I think this is a conversation worth having at this point, where what's going on? Like, why are these stocks plummeting when there's fundamental reasons for believing that like their businesses are in their best era, essentially in terms of like profits and revenues? And what is the public sentiment like right now in terms of for SaaS companies? So that's where I want to kind of start with is like, what's the negative? Like, what is the panic that's happening? And then Matt and I will probably argue about it a little bit as we go through, and we'll talk about why a lot of this is going to be a little bit overblown, in my opinion. But the problem is that our version of overblown is like a logical overblown, like why we think this shouldn't happen, why we think that these stocks shouldn't be plummeting. That does not control the market. And at the end of the day, what goes into the investors' pockets is probably the thing that's king for these companies and the thing that they care about the most. So when their stock is going down, even though they're profiting, they're recording record profits, I think that changes an industry as we see it. Like it's a weird thing to say, like you're making a lot of money, but you still have to pivot to appease investors so that your stock can go up, so that the investors can make more money, the board can make more money, the CEOs can make more money. Such a weird place that we're in. Matt and I were talking about this right before the show. And like, I can't wrap my head fully around how the markets work. And I don't think anyone can, including this, like, the expert in the markets. And because of that, it's becoming kind of a disaster for companies specifically that are trying to find their place or trying to pivot to the right spot at the points when they shouldn't be pivoting. Like, they're making so much money. Why would they pivot? But they're it seems like they're being forced.
Well, the long and short of it is that, I mean, software like Salesforce is a difficult thing to make. It is a difficult thing to market. It is a difficult thing to it's a difficult thing to maintain, and it also provides a lot of value. So it has that sort of formula that, like, they've obviously got marketing down. They've obviously made the product work. They have an install base, they have customers, so they have some sort of trust. I don't personally use Salesforce, but I hear about it all the time and have heard about it for years. Obviously, it's a large company at this point where, they do have a ticker symbol. They do have they are a public company, right? You can purchase their shares in that. It's all based upon the fact that what they're doing is difficult and it provides value. And I think what the panic is that AI has just created demos or clones or cloned demos of what some of these pieces of software can do with just a few prompts or maybe a prompt or whatever. And we have an issue now where people are like, oh my God, it's now no longer difficult to do this. And so a major sort of keystone in that formula is Salesforce still valuable? Well, yeah, but is it difficult to make? Maybe the barrier to entry is easier now. And of course, everyone's going to start panicking. But I mean, software, especially when it's very specific software, when it's very advanced software like Salesforce, like you and I were talking, Mike, about QuickBooks, something like, Mike and I use our QuickBooks at a very surface level. Our accountant goes in there and does all the taxes and checks all the books and does all the whatever they do. But they tell us, hey, go in here and make sure you fill in these numbers and make sure you attach receipts and make sure you have the dates right. And they give us sort of like a long and short really of what we need to do. And then we go in and we do that. And that's all we do. But in the background, there's reports being generated. There's things that are being created. There's tax rates. There's laws that are being adhered to, or the software is preparing to do that. I mean, even crypto tax software. Obviously, you if you're in Canada, we don't have the IRS. We have the CRA. You look for sort of CRA certified or Canada friendly income tax when it comes to crypto software, because it's difficult to sort of have those software mechanisms that adhere to the law. You have to have someone that understands the legal law stuff. You then have to have someone that translates that into technical ability, which is the software having the technical ability. And I mean, prompting that into existence when there's so much abstracted away from us. Like in Mike and my situation, the QuickBooks itself is highly advanced. It's highly advanced because it's doing a bunch of math and things, but it's also highly advanced because it's allowing an accountant to log in for us. It itself has a bunch of guardrails and stuff that's set up by the jurisdiction that you're in and where you are. And in Canada, you have provincial and federal taxes. So depending where you are in the country, the taxes are different, which I assume is the same for the states in the various states that you're in. And so the amount of prompting, if you just think about it, the amount of prompting to get to that point would be, I mean, a lot. And then at the end of the day, you wouldn't all receive necessarily a standardized output, right? Where like maybe I prompt into existence, a free QuickBooks as an example. I prompt that into existence and then I give that to our accountant. What if that's not the software they're used to? What are they going to do? Each of their clients, they're going to learn how to use these little individual SaaS, not SaaS things that people have created. What about next year when the laws change?
I think, yes, I like we talked about this before. I agree with you that there's some software that's really difficult to replicate, and an internal team won't just like go out and replicate QuickBooks most likely because of everything that you just said. What I do see happening is with AI, with agents, as they get better and better, the moat becomes smaller and smaller. So even if you have very complicated integrated software with very complex like taxing and taxing systems and reporting systems, the reality is that the better the agents get, the better they're going to get at like figuring that stuff out, including the integrations, including the relationships potentially even that are required, so that it'll be able to reach out to the right agent. Maybe all of these like banks are going to have their own agent platforms that agents can talk to, right? Like who knows? And the investors that are investing in companies are seeing the future of like, hey, maybe that is the case. Maybe like a QuickBooks competitor like 3 years ago would take years to be developed and then years of relationships to form. And so the moat was really, really heavy and really, really big. And now the moat's getting so small that, a QuickBooks competitor can be built with a small team in like a year or 6 months, and then just a bunch of agents, right? That could actually come in and compete with QuickBooks on like, functionality and be more UI UX friendly because it's a greenfield project, etc. So like there is some argument there that I could see being made as they get better. And that's something that I want to talk about is like, I've changed my screen right now if you're watching the show. And what I'm showing here is the demos that people talk about, quote unquote demos, which is a Notion clone. So Natter, who works at Cognition right now, who the creators of Devon AI, and they do a bunch of other stuff right now. I think Windsurf they bought Windsurf, but regardless, he's testing out the new model that came out yesterday, which is Fable, the Mythos level model that Anthropic released, and he asked it to just build a Notion clone, right? So if you see the screen right now, he's showing a bunch of different functionality of Notion, and it's looking pretty good. Like we don't have again, this is a demo. That's why I say demo, because we don't have the like we're not looking at this ourselves. We're not trying it ourselves. But from like a very high level perspective, this looks like Notion. And if it did it in 30 minutes, what is Notion's moat? Realistically, the moat does exist. Let me be clear, and I'm going to talk about that. Like the moat does exist, but it's becoming smaller. And if a company like, let's say Cognition, which is a pretty big AI company right now, is like, hey, we built this, we have a few engineers idle because they're doing other AI stuff, they're waiting for AI stuff. Why don't we just put this into like an internal product and cancel our Notion subscription? That's the story that's being told, right? Like there's this story of like, if you look at a company's bill, their bill, like the amount of money that they're paying subscriptions is really high. If you
Of
look at their
course.
CRM, if you look at all their AI coding tools, like that's a subscription model. If you look at all of the other like accounting tools and productivity tools that they're paying for, it's very high. Like these companies charge a lot of money to use their products, and they charge on a per seat basis as well. And so there will come a point when the agent is good enough that maybe it makes sense to start looking at that and start comparing it to an engineer's cost and time plus an agent's cost and time, and be like, maybe it does make sense to spend some engineering effort with agents to build alternatives to these like lower hanging fruits. Not to everything, obviously, but to these lower hanging fruits, like Notion is a prime example. So like that's the steelman argument. Like that's one of the biggest steelman arguments is as the capabilities jump, the requirements and the ability to create these lower hanging fruits SaaSes starts to become easier and easier and cheaper, and companies might start going in that direction. And so investors see this, they get scared, and they're like, if you've ever watched Shark Tank, a lot of questions on Shark Tank are asked like, what's your moat? What's stopping, Joe down the street from doing what you're doing? And a lot of times it's like expertise, whatever, like super intricate expertise. Patents are a big one that people talk about on Shark Tank, and then it's like, oh, engineering effort required to build this. Well, one of those moats is almost gone. Like engineering requirement is almost gone. And it's never been a very good moat. Let me be clear about that. Like if you would have showed up on Shark Tank and been like, I'm a developer. There's not many developers out there, and I'm the only one that can build this. They're gonna laugh at you. It's like, it's not just Shark Tank; it's investors in general. They'll be like, well, get an Apple engineer in here. I'll pay him $200,000 or $300,000, and I'll have him build this thing in 6 months to a year, right? Like this is before AI. It's kind of the same argument, but like now it's like, okay, I'll get him in here and he'll build it in a week. That's the kind of conversations that the VCs would have, like that the VCs would come back with.
Well,
So
it was a moat. The engineering moat was a good moat against the general public, though.
yeah,
We're starting to have these AI tools be used by complete amateurs. People are not in tech. They are not coding. They've never touched code. They don't know what code is really. And so that's ultimately one of the value adds a company has, is that they're doing something difficult that the public, especially if it's a publicly available product, that the public would have difficulty doing. Obviously, your competitors, like talking about competing in the market with B2B, business to business, you kind of having those arguments, those fights, and those, the competition. I mean, straight up between businesses, that's a different story. Because that's not a great moat against your competitors, but it is a moat for demand potentially.
It is a moat, but like it's difficult. I think there is some pricing in of what you're saying, Matt, of in like the general public being able to build these like little micro apps using, Google has presented it as like a new search interface where like they type in something and it'll build them a little micro UI for that specific thing that they might have paid for a SaaS before and they won't now. I that's like, in my opinion, the least concerning thing. I think the biggest concerning thing is giving this tool to engineers makes it so that they can build their competitors' products 10 times faster now. And therefore the moat of like time to build has gone down quite a bit, and ability to build and the cost to build has gone down quite a bit to a certain degree.
But we saw the same thing though with website builders, where if we zoom out of the developer space for a second and we look at who's consuming the websites, it's people who have businesses, small businesses, large businesses, and everything in between. It's people who have businesses. And websites used to be, the biggest businesses would have the fanciest websites. And then website builders came in and really attached themselves to design trends and parallax and sliders and animations and fancy text and fading things in and out and transitions and all these things. And it democratized the skill not only to engineers, where like engineers had to do it, and it made it so that the every person could just go in, sign up for one of these services and create a really nice looking website. And like we had a conversation recently with how on an episode about how long websites last. And there certainly is still a difference between, a top of the line, kind of cutting edge marketing website versus someone who, is just trying to make sure that people can book tee times at the local golf course. There's certainly a disparity there, but the disparity is not huge. It's not like one person's using plain text and the other person's using fancy images and videos. It's like they all have fancy text, they all have transitions, they all have videos. It's just one maybe updated every 2 years, whereas the other guy's going to keep his around for 5 to 10 because it's a different scale of business. But my point is that it's like been democratized, like the skill's been democratized. However, web developers remain. On the back end of all that, you still have web developers. I mean, we still ship small business websites. We still ship small business websites all the time. I help people with my primary thing is small to medium businesses. It's why I'm not super into all of the hyper modern coding stuff. It's because they don't use that stuff. They use the WordPresses, they use the Webflows of the world, and then I enhance it with code because but I'm not just brought in for that part. I enhance those platforms with a bit of custom code to push those platforms further than they can out of the box, right? However, it's not like the client is coming to me with an almost completed thing and they go, Matt, just do the little bits and bobs that you add. They come to me and say, do the whole thing. I don't want to learn how to do this. I don't want to learn how to add a slider. The heck with it. I don't want to touch it. So like it is still like a bit of a moat. And I think it adds credence to the fact that this is an immediate freak out because the things are shifting. Website builders shifted things. Website builders absolutely shifted things, but it wasn't completely destructive. It was not an apocalypse on web development and web design. It was not an apocalypse. Templates were not an apocalypse. Templates being readily available for free or for relatively affordable, it was not an apocalypse. I don't think that this is an apocalypse either. It could be. There are things that become apocalyptic to industries, like the horse industry cars destroyed them. I mean, like how many people are ripping around on horses compared to what they were back in the Old West? I mean.
So my question to you, Matt, and I think this relates exactly to what investors are doing or like investment bots or whatever, and why we're seeing the sell-off, right? My question to you, let's say you had a friend who has a little brother and he comes to you and he's like, hey, he's right before university. He's like, hey, should I get into web development? Should I do what you do? right? Like, is that something that I should invest my time into? Should I go into school for like software engineering or whatever? Like, should I go to college for web development, whatever? What is your answer to them?
Well, my immediate instinct is that the industry is going through a major change. Like, almost sounds hypocritical from what I just was saying, where I was trying to like calm the alarm bells.
Mm-hmm.
There are alarm bells going off in my head, of course. There's major shifts that are happening. There's major changes. There's lots of promises of, oh my God, we're going to be, our next coding model is going to replace everybody, and all this stuff. And there's a lot of panic there. However, if I try to look at it more objectively, is it absurd to say that there's never going to be a tech worker in 30 years? And the reason why I say tech worker and not developer is I don't know if developer is going to be around that role, but people that are in tech can bounce around. People that are in tech are able to learn adjacent skills and are able to maneuver around tech quite a bit. I mean, we were never taught IT security in college, and one of our college mates is an IT security tech. And so obviously, he was able to learn new skills somehow and then, move on to that. And as far as I know, he did not go through any more sort of post-secondary, college or university training. And so I would honestly just say that. I would say that if you're really into just the coding part, maybe not. But if you're willing to learn the coding today and you're willing to expand your own skill set through adjacent jobs or your own research or your own side projects or whatever, and those don't have to be coding side projects, by the way, but if you're willing to expand your technical skill set, do I think tech workers are going to be around in 30 years? Yeah.
I mean, that's a good answer. I would say like that's a good indicator. I think it's really difficult right now to like recommend a path because of exactly what you're saying. Like it's just so up in the air. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Right.
There's still going to be a requirement for people. Like I think, with a caveat, obviously, but like if someone came up to me today and they're like, "Should I get into web development or should I get into coding?" I'd have a very tough time saying yes. But I would also have a very tough time recommending something else. I think that's where I'm stuck. Is like, what else is there? Okay, go down. Like, what if they don't want to do like physical labor? Right? Like, is there really any other job in the non-physical labor space that's quote unquote not going through a revolution?
Well, when something becomes this displacing, though, I'm not one to say, oh my God, the government's going to come and save us. However, the government's going to take notice of this one because they are going to realize, oh, if I help the people that are potentially going to be displaced, I'm going to get votes, whatever side that is, left, right, up, down, center. I really don't care. The point of the matter is that they're going to take notice of, we better do something. And, or they're going to say, this is a great marketing opportunity for us. We're going to be the party, whatever side it is. We're going to be the party that helps the people that are worried about being displaced, and that we're going to get all their votes. And so, I think that there would actually, if something is this big, as big as they keep saying, there would be some sort of intervention which would change the trajectory of the market if it were just run by the private sector. If that makes sense. Like, for example, if literally every industry, like you're saying, because even heavy industry, like people keep saying this labor stuff, I think that's all nonsense, personally. And the reason why I think that's nonsense is because we have robots. We've had robotics and advanced robotics for years. The missing piece to the robotics is the intelligence. Now we're starting to get the intelligence. Are you telling me that, okay, Matt, like you learn to make these, complex IT systems and everything else and, all these things. Cool. You don't need to do that anymore. Go lift that box and move it from point A to point B, and that's all you do all day, realistically. That's all you do all day, 12 hours a day. You don't think that they're going to try to get a robot in there to replace me picking up a box from point A to point B? I think they would.
Yeah, without intervention, like you're saying, I think that the only reason I say that like the labor is the maybe safer path, quote unquote, is I think it's just a little bit further out. It's a little bit harder to replace. It's a little bit harder to make a general purpose robot. Let me be clear about that. it's not hard to make, or not hard, but like we already have very specific robotics, like the robotic arms that can do certain things.
Yeah,
But a general purpose robot that can, like you said, learn and be intelligent and do the regular labor that is required of a human is we're doing it right now. But there's like probably hundreds of companies now in that space. But
right.
I still like from the demos that I'm seeing from like CES and Computex and all that, it still seems like a pretty far leap. Like a lot of companies, for example, the way that they're doing it right now is like a lot of companies will hire humans to control the robots to gather the training data required to then replace them.
Sure.
So like we're still in the data gathering phase, and I think we're still a ways away from the robots being like agile and strong enough and general purpose enough and intelligent enough to really start replacing the general labor as a whole. So it's not to say that this is a full-time solution, but like, if you're choosing a more safe place, maybe like for the next, 5 to 6 years or 5 to 10 years, it's safer in the general labor.
But I will
I
say
don't know.
this. The factories today are designed with machines working alongside humans.
Yes,
So we may
absolutely.
completely radicalize how the factories go. And obviously, usually the answer to things is not one side or the other. It's usually somewhere in between.
Yep.
So I mean, even the gigafactories of Tesla, they were supposed to be virtually all unmanned. And then they found out, well, it's a real pain to like get, a robot to line up a bolt or to do a slight adjustment because humans can think on the fly and robots are like, check all the parameters. It looks like it's okay. Why isn't it working? And then it doesn't really have a way out of that thought process. But again, like the Gigafactory is kind of a Gen 1 product in a way where
Yeah.
it's a Gen 1 of a, hey, let's try to make this entire factory automated.
Mhm.
And it's not like they were like, well, all right, back to the drawing board and do it again. It's like, no, it's too much money. They want to make Teslas. They have to make Teslas, the cars. And so away they go, right? They
Mhm.
they do their thing. I think like when I talk about government intervention, what I mean is that if it's going to be as apocalyptic in terms of a job market as if it's going to be as apocalyptic as the people on the very cutting edge think, when people say things like every industry is going to be completely revolutionized and we're not going to need people and it's going to be automated, yeah, but that doesn't really work though, because people are the ones that are the ones that need, want, and purchase products. People
Mhm.
are also the ones that own houses and pay mortgages and pay for roads to be created and all the rest of it. That like the instant that a large portion, like let's say 50%, if 50% of the population within a 5-year period becomes unemployed, I don't see the government just sort of idly standing by being like, well, I guess we're going to get crushed. They're like something's going to give, whether there's going to be some sort of tax on if you use this much technology, you have to pay back into a fund and then that goes into a mincome. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree with any of this. All I'm saying is that if you make it so that like a government, especially like a democratically elected government, looks bad, they're scared of getting voted out.
Mhm.
And so then they're going to push back against the thing that potentially is going to get them voted out. Like every time. We're seeing it in Canada with like AI data centers being kiboshed, where, oh, this is a potential AI data center. Protest opens up and then boom, we don't have it anymore.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. I think that if it completely guts tech, I don't think you'll see much government intervention because it's just tech. It's not tech and agriculture and the trades and everything you're saying. And then you're saying, maybe it's safer to go into like labor. I don't necessarily disagree with that. If it's going to go the way that they keep saying it is, and that's a big, big, big if, where like AI is going to inject itself everywhere and add automation everywhere. If it does go that way, if you hop around jobs, you're just delaying the inevitable. And the inevitable, may not be 50 years away where you're like, I'm gonna very quickly, work for 30 to 50 years and then try to retire. It's like, it's probably coming for you faster than that.
Yeah, it's an extraordinarily complicated topic that we have tackled a few times on the podcast at this point. Like we've tried, or at least tried to tackle. It's to the point where like we can't worry about it on a day-to-day basis. If we do, then we're just going to be analysis paralysis and we're not going to get anything done, right? Like the real advice here is you got to learn the tools that are available to you today and be as efficient as possible with them. And that's been the advice, let me be like before AI. When IDEs became smarter, there were people on the other side of the IDE argument being like, I'm using Notepad and I'm never switching from Notepad. And then there were people who are like, well, I'm just going to use VS Code because it's faster. And a lot of times that benefited them. Because then in the interview that they had coming up next time, they were asked a bunch of VS Code questions and they could answer them and they might have, seemed better. So being able to use the tools that are available to you is really the only thing we can do. I think the hardest part for me right now is like, giving advice to the younger generation because I have nothing. Like I have nothing I can tell them that makes any sense. Like other than like, hey, learn the tools as well and be as efficient as you possibly can with those AI tools without, making yourself dumb. But it's a really difficult conversation for the newest generation. For us, we just gotta, day by day, and it should be okay to a certain degree. I do think that before the government really interjects, there's going to be some pain. Like there has to be some pain that causes the public to start voting in different ways, obviously. So that's what I'm most worried about. And that's what I'm trying to mitigate against the most internally is like, how am I not part of that pain? You know what I
Well,
mean?
of
Like,
course. I mean, that's what we
yeah,
all try to do. I mean,
yeah,
going into tech was always like this miraculous land of, oh my God, we're always
mm,
going to need tech and we're always going to have
yep,
tech and we're always going to have developers and we're always going to have IT personnel. We're always going to have, and like, I mean, that's still the case. Like that still could be the case.
mhm,
Predicting the future is kind of a fool's errand if you're like actually trying to lock down certain things. It is a
yep,
bit of a fool's errand because you don't know what's going to happen.
yep. And that's why I wouldn't make like a radical change out of tech. Like I wouldn't just all of a sudden be like, you know what, I'm going to be a car mechanic and just like go be a car mechanic today because it just doesn't like for us specifically, it doesn't make sense. Like we have a lot of expertise in this and I'm willing to adapt to it. So that's where I'm going to invest my time and effort and hope that pays off. Um,
Although that path isn't that crazy, because there are people that are getting fed up with tech. Like, I mean, even myself, like I noticed the cracks where I'm just trying to roll my eyes at a lot of tech articles and things, and it's less optimistic, and it's less like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing in the future. It's more, oh, okay, well, you're going to take my job, and then this is going to go downhill, and then that's going to be a problem. And now whether that's the millennial pessimism, coursing through my veins, I don't know, but I do find myself rolling my eyes more than, kind of jumping for joy and cheering when something gets announced. And I mean, like back to the episode with like the whole
mhm,
like SaaS apocalypse thing. It's like how many, thousands and thousands of not only developers, but also marketing personnel and office administrators. And I mean, even the executives, really, I know people don't like executives, but even the executives, I like how many, hundreds of thousands of workers across all these different SaaS companies are employed because of different SaaS opportunities. I mean, we mentioned QuickBooks, but like Intuit has a bunch of different offerings. Intuit's
mhm,
the sort of main company, I suppose, of QuickBooks. QuickBooks is one of their pieces of software, and many companies are like that. I mean, there's full ecosystems within ecosystems. WordPress is a thing, and so Automatic is a thing, which is tied to the creator of WordPress. But then you also have the company, which immediately WP something, WordPress engine, I think WP engine, I believe. They have a bunch of offerings, different plugins, ACF being one of them, and like there's ecosystems in ecosystems, and they're SaaS based. But I will say this is that you could say, and I hear this all the time, people are sick of subscriptions. So you could say, sure, that AI is going to be this big thing that kills SaaS and this and that. But you could also argue that the writing was already on the wall for SaaS. And the reason why that is not because the entire industry is going to be torn out and spit out and thrown in the garbage. You could say it's because people can't afford, this is another $10, that's another 5, that's another 50, there's another 30, that's 100, that's 120, this one's 10. Being someone who works with WordPress and being a person that goes, okay, like I'm gonna, use some popular plugins on my customers' websites. Oh, I hit a small limitation. Go look. That's an extra 20 a month. Oh, hit another small limitation. That's an extra 20 a month. Hit another small limitation. That's an extra 30 a month plus another 10 because I have to get a plugin of a plugin to do this. And then people could say, well, you could just code it up yourself. You're right. And sometimes I do that. I absolutely do. However, it's still a thing where you could see the nickel and diming really apparent in something like WordPress. And that's not WordPress's fault. That's the nature of the industry. But just let's say zoom out and go to like a regular person that's not in tech, like just a person that's sort of living life. How many SaaS are they a part of? Netflix. They're a part of like, Paramount Plus. There's subscriptions for cars to have like auto start and stuff in your car and stuff like that, especially if it's a luxury vehicle. You have a bunch of stuff like that. They might have accounting software that they use, so that's a SaaS. They might do work at home, so they might need the Microsoft 365 suite. That's a SaaS. The list just keeps going on. Every single time they need a piece of software, it's another subscription. It's another subscription, another subscription. I mean, even things like, oh, I'm gonna use Amazon. Oh, Amazon Prime. There's another subscription. Oh, I don't want Prime Video with ads. Well, that's another subscription. Like the list, you know what I mean? Like the list just keeps going on, and you can see how things can easily and quickly spiral out of control when it comes to SaaS, and you can see the fatigue of SaaS in the market. Like I'd honestly be enticed if it was like, oh, I'm gonna alleviate my one of the limitations that I'm having, one of the issues I'm having with my WordPress site. Oh, there's a little plugin that allows there to be a toggle switch. It's $10 once. Okay. And I might even just eat that cost and write it off and not pass it on to the client. But every single time I'm going to do that, it's like, oh, that's $10 a month, that's $20 a month, $50, $30. And being Canadian, it's even worse because oftentimes those prices are in American. So now you have like this whole other thing, and I understand that WordPress is open source, and I know that there's alternatives out there, and I'm thankful for the open source community. The very fact that I could even have this sort of like little rant, you could argue that SaaS already had a bit of the writing on the wall due to fatigue, and that this is just sort of the guy that came in with the hammer and said, all right, and the wall was already cracked, and then boom, there it goes.
And that's absolutely the case, by the way. Like apparently as of 2021, growth has started to decline in SaaS. And that's, again, 2021 is before AI even came into the market.
Right.
So SaaS fatigue was already a thing. The problem is that what you're saying, where like these SaaS companies have hundreds of thousands of employees to support this model, that those two things can't be true at the same time. So if we're seeing SaaS start to fall and people are tired of paying monthly subscriptions but they're still willing to pay like, a year, maybe a yearly, but like a one-time subscription fee, you would have to remove a lot of employees for that to start making sense.
Correct.
Most of these businesses have infrastructure costs. The reason that SaaS even came about was because like, hey, like we have these servers, $10 one time, giving you access to those servers is impossible from a like cost perspective. So we need a constant maintenance thing. We need constant maintenance costs to be able to support our thousands upon thousands of people to come in and start using this. So like you would have to rethink the software model or like revert the software model back to what it was in the like early Windows days, where it was more local software that you purchased and it wasn't updated. It was updated once a year and you had to purchase a license once a year if you wanted those updates, but it also didn't rely on a massive server infrastructure, massive amount of like Amazon AWS instances and stuff like that needed constant upkeep. So you have to like almost go back to first principles with software, go back to first principles with company size as well. So maybe like instead of having, 10,000 person company, go back to having like 100 person company and having more and more of these micro companies that are self-sustainable, but not created for infinite growth. So that might be something that happens. And like we've talked about this on the show too, where like, the democratization of coding might develop more competition in spaces that lacked it. And therefore it'll create smaller companies that can compete with larger companies and therefore lower costs across the board and maybe potentially even create jobs in that space. That's all going to take time, obviously. Like, we're not going to see that happen overnight. But you're right in the sense of like, hey, SaaS was already becoming exhausting. I'm already exhausted having to pay for subscriptions. I can't justify paying for any more subscriptions anymore. Like, I'm removing subscriptions. From a business perspective as well, the other thing that's really a real big pain in the ass is like seat cost. Like, if you're looking at something like a HubSpot or Vercel or all these other companies that are like, hey, this is our core product is like hosting services. Okay. That's Vercel's core product. And the way they make money is obviously on the hosting part, but they also make money on the fact that every developer that you put into Vercel, you have to pay an extra $20, $30 a month for their seat. So now you're like double charging them, and the seat doesn't make any sense. You already have the hosting. And so like we're getting exhausted from having to get double charged on everything. And what we're seeing actually happened like already is that some of these companies are coming out, Netlify being one of them, and being like, we're dropping seat prices to try to compete and be like, hey, we understand that your frustration. We're going to only charge for hosting. Now they're charging more for hosting to compensate for the seat prices being dropped. But like, there's already micro effects in the market due to the pressure. And it's not just AI pressure. Like you were saying, this is happening in 2021, like the downfall of SaaS. This has just accelerated it a little bit because investors are starting to pull out from these companies. So they have to react in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But to say that SaaS is dead as a whole is almost impossible because, again, a lot of these services require massive amounts of servers that can't be subsidized by a one-time cost. Or if it is subsidized by a one-time cost, it would have to be like Plex, where they just increase their cost to like what, $750 for the Plex Pass or something like that. Like
something like that. It's quite expensive.
Yeah,
for the
they
lifetime
5x'd
license.
it. Yeah, they 5x'd their lifetime license, but that's because they have to maintain a bunch of server infrastructure for those people that buy the lifetime license, and they have to make like an indication of like how long is this person going to use it and how much money are they going to cost, and then what's the profit margin on that, and then they start doing that, and then they're like, and then not only that, they're like, well, if they need investments, they need to show profit and growth, so we need to price that in as well. So like, how do we grow with this kind of subscription? And like, it becomes a very complicated balance sheet issue due to our like capitalistic nature and how markets work, that as soon as we figured out SaaS, it's almost impossible to go back if you want to maintain growth, which every public company or even private company that wants investments needs to maintain to continue on the same trajectory that they are. So companies are either going to have to die, they're going to have to adapt, or a different model is going to have to come out. Like maybe again, like an agentic, I don't know, like something that I don't have a good clue in on what that could be.
Well, like you and I were talking in this episode, I believe, but also before as well, for sure. Talking about how, all these agents are, agents are talking to agents, and agents you're buying things now, and agents are going to run the world, and agents, and that's all we ever hear about. I think we definitely talked about it before the show. I don't remember if we mentioned it in the course of our conversation sort of live here, but that's all we hear about, right? Oh, agentic browsing. Give your agent a bit of a retainer or like a wallet, and allow it to spend $100 for you, and it'll decide things for you, and it'll do this and it'll do that, and agents. And I mentioned, man, people are just constantly calling me too, by the way. I keep like silencing a device, and then something else goes off. Then I silence the next one, and something else goes off. Then now my watch is going off, and something's ringing.
Yeah, it's probably the agents. Their agents
has never happened in the history of this show, I don't think. And now I'm just getting, it's just like Matt. Like, I wanted to change my ringtone to that actually on like really busy days where it's just Matt constantly, but no, that's a bad idea. But the point of the matter is like, we're talking agents this, agents that, agents this. Sure, agents can maybe spend some money and understand how to spend money, and they could do some budgeting things, and they could do this and that. The buck still stops with us, the humans. We are the ones that have the motivations, the desires, the wants, the needs, and we are the ones that power the economy. At the end of the day, the agents are not going to be the ones that are like, you know what? Like, I think I'm going to start a new currency. Like, unless they suddenly gain sentience or for somehow are programmed to have motivation, the buck stops with us. And so if all of our economic systems collapse, are the agentic browsers still going to be given money by us to then go and buy subscriptions and all these things, right? Like, no. And so when you're saying like different business models, I think that like that makes sense. Having different license tiers. I mean, just recently, and I'm just paraphrasing, but the new CEO of Xbox, Asha Sharma, she was having a conversation about how people are going to have that sticker shock at $1,000 console. If you're into video games, consoles, I don't think have ever been $1,000. I know adjusted for inflation and things. That's why I said I don't think they ever have. But in terms of the actual sticker price, I've never seen $1,000 console short of, well, was the Xbox One X maybe? I don't know. Doesn't matter. That was a
No.
niche console. But regardless of which, now we're talking about, I don't know, 11 to 1,500 American or Canadian, I'd say probably 1,100 to 1,500 for the next round of consoles, PlayStation and that, due to RAM shortages, due to the nature of the business, due to COVID, due to profiteering, due to whatever, right? Like list goes on and on and on. And she said people are not going to react well to that sticker price, and so you're going to have interesting business models come up. And immediately my thought was, well, I'm going to have the console for 8 years or whatever however long it's relevant. Make it a SaaS. Charge me a monthly fee. I'm in your ecosystem. You're making money every time I make a game, like a royalty or whatever. I'm using your Game Pass. I'm using your Xbox Live or your Xbox Network or whatever they call it now. I'm doing that. Charge that for me. I'd sign up for that. 0%. Sounds great. And I would do that. And I'm not saying that that's not financial advice. Someone may be like, Matt, you're an idiot. But I mean, I really don't want to pay, 1,500 Canadian for a console, but I want to play my games. And so if you tell me $300 up front and then you're paying $30 a month. Okay. Sounds all right.
But that's what you're doing right now. The problem with that model is like you're already doing that. So why would they go there looking for more money? Like that's not, it would have to be way more than that because you're already paying for Xbox Live or whatever it's called now.
It's like just Xbox Game Pass Ultimate.
Yeah, Xbox Game Pass. Yeah, you're already paying the $30 a month, plus you're paying for $600 for a console. So it would have to be something like, $500 for the console and then a financed subscription fee that's like a 2-year finance subscription fee of like another $60 or $80 a month.
Something like that. Or
to justify it.
Or what I said to my one buddy was have it be a contract of sorts where I have to buy Game Pass. Like I'll still pay monthly, but I have to buy Game Pass for 3 years or 5 years. And then have there be like a big exit fee. Something like that. And like, this isn't what, this part of the conversation is not what Asha said. I'm just sort of like talking out loud to my friends, but like at the same time, it's like, makes sense. Like, so like different business models are going to come out of this. And we're already seeing this in gaming. If you're into games, like you'll start noticing that single player games are generally now cheaper than these sort of big AAA, big multiplayer behemoths that are not free to play. Those games are, some of them are $89.99, talking Canadian prices. Some of them are $99.99 and things. And some of these games are $60 Canadian, which is considered cheap here. $50, $40, $30. You're starting to see the rise of the AA game again. And it doesn't all have to be AAA game. You're starting to see that. Indie games already kind of fill that niche a little bit now, but AA games are just a bit more budget, just a bit of a bigger team. And like you're seeing the market react. And so all this, panic and everything, the AI stuff is so fatiguing where it's like AI is going to gut everything. Is it? Because if it guts everything, then there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, someone's going to come in and like try to stop it. Like they're not just going to let everything just go absolutely down the crapper.
But most of these companies are rushing to be the ones that survive and capture the biggest market share before the correction needs to happen. That's the reality of what's going on right now. It's like the AI companies know that this can't take over the entire industry, every part of every industry, but they also know that there's going to be a period where they can profiteer quite a bit before the governments catch up and, they start to be pushed back or they start to get like some other, in their ideal case, it would just be like a mincome where people still pay to use their products, but they don't have to work, but they still have money somehow. I don't know. It's all kind of crazy to me, but they're trying to rush to be the ones that profit the most in the shortest amount of time before this correction needs to happen. So they're saying whatever they can to get people to believe it, to get
Of
people to
course.
shift to it, and to get people to use them as much as possible. So there's a lot of marketing lingo going on. And the other part of this is there's a lot of AI psychosis happening as well. And I'm part of that psychosis sometimes too, because I use AI a lot. And what I mean by the AI psychosis is like they believe this stuff. Like if you talk to Dario Amodei, who is the CEO and like founder of Anthropic, like if you see any interviews with him and he like the stuff that he says, like, hey, we can't release Mythos because it's too dangerous. We can't do this because it's, like all of a sudden, like, jobs are going to be gone in 6 months, no more developers. In my opinion, he's not saying that as a marketing gimmick. I know some people think that he's saying that as a marketing gimmick.
And it's
I
possible. Like you're speculating as well. Like
I am 100% speculating, 100% possible, but I don't think he's saying that as a marketing gimmick. I think he's under AI psychosis to believing that it's real because he's very isolated, right? He's only thinking and looking at this stuff. But the reality, and this is what I want to talk about right now, is like the industry doesn't just shift on a dime. Like you can't just ask all corporations to sort of all of a sudden trust AI with everything and have all engineers be replaced in a year, have every pipeline be changed, have every tool that's being used be integrated with AI. It's just not possible. It's happening slowly and probably faster than other industries have happened before, but it's not going to be this switch that happens. And this is the same thing with SaaS. We're seeing it right now. Like you can't just clone up a Notion replacement. A lot of times what's going to happen is you're going to clone up and it's going to be cool for a day or two. And maybe even you're going to get your company to start using it. And then some Joe, Bob down the hallway is going to be like, hey, my integration with Bixbop Jikabop, I'm just making shit up right now, isn't
what?
working. Yeah, there is no integration with it. And he's going to come to you, the person that is promoting this, like, hey, let's replace SaaSes. And he's like, it's not working. I did this in Notion. I clicked these 3 buttons and it was working and it's not working here. And you're going to be like, okay, well, maybe I can fix that. And you're going to go in and fix that. And then Joe will come down the street and be like, you know what? My integration with the bespoke calendar service XBF FR2P DRG isn't working as well. And you're going to be like, okay, so I have to integrate that. And okay, and then someone else, like the CEO, will ring you and be like, "Hey, it's 3 a.m. and I can't access my calendar on Notion and that's where I access everything, and I only work at 3 a.m. and this is really my only work time. So you're actually costing the company $7 million a second. Can you get it back up?" And so this is going to be the life of the person that's going to be in charge of replacing the internal SaaS applications that have been around for a long time. And I'm not saying this out of comedy. I'm not saying this out of anything. I'm saying this out of 100% reality. That is going to be the case. So if
Of
you're
course.
internally trying to push, hey, I'll replace our Notion sub or I'll replace our thing, think about it a little bit more. Think about I don't want to say this too crassly, the least technical competent employee that uses the piece of software that you're going to be replacing. And think about them calling you on a daily basis for stuff that is probably working, but they don't understand because you're the one in charge of replacing that software, not AI. You are. And even if you say okay, I'll just pipe it into AI. Well, if something goes wrong in that loop, you're still the one that has to interact with that loop. So it's not going to be as easy as just replacing it. Honestly, these demos are about 10% of what's required from a SaaS. The rest of it is literally support, maintenance, security, integrations. Like I was saying, BibBop Jaboo, the integration with BibBop Jaboo is really important. And if you ever worked at an enterprise, these names sound weird, but I can guarantee you've heard of a random name like that was super important to Joe down the hall. And you're going to be, you've never heard of this software before, but this guy can't live without it, or this integration before, but this guy can't live without it. And it's costing the company millions of dollars a second every time he can't use that random integration. This is the moat. The moat is, it's not just like a software product. It's a maintenance software product. The maintenance around it is very complicated. These big companies like Notion have hundreds of people just dedicated to that shit. And they've
Yeah.
gone through the ringer. They have gone through the ringer. Trust me on this. The calls that they've had, the support tickets that they've had are crazy compared to what you imagine them to be. And they've solved for a lot of those cases. And now they have a fairly stable product that they've invested millions of dollars into. And they have a machine, a support machine around that product that is able to pick up the phone at 3 a.m. and talk to your CEO and actually solve their problem without having to, wake up the entire company or whatever. That's the reality that we're going in. Not only that, the other part of this, and the other most important part of this, is migrating from an existing service to another service. Let's say you decide to make the Notion switch, right? You're a Fortune 500 company, and you're like, we're going to switch from Notion to our own internal Notion tool that we've just generated in 3 minutes. Migrate the data.
There's a reason why mainframes are still exist. Not for Notion clearly, but for massive amounts of data and stuff. And there's a reason why it hasn't been migrated away. I mean, if you have a new company, what's a company on a mainframe? Give me a big company.
Oh, like banks, like any bank.
Sure. So like
logistics companies, Walmart.
I'll just say TD Canada Trust. It's a local bank. I'll just assume they're on a mainframe. I have no insight. They have a mainframe in the background, whatever, blah, blah, blah. If Mike and I were like, we're going to create a new bank, we would not get a mainframe. My point is that mainframes are replaceable, but people have not done the migration for that yet. And there's a good reason for it.
And the migration isn't just data. It's, okay, you've made a Notion clone. Is it one-to-one?
What's it all connected to?
Yeah. Is it the same URL? Because again, Bill down the hall only knows how to go to Notion.io.
Correct.
He can't write Notion L. That's impossible. You're asking them to change their entire lives. And I'm being a little bit facetious, but that is the reality of this situation.
You're not being facetious to me though. I was in IT. Like we had, I had a guy call me one time, allegedly a networking expert. Anyway, calls me up and he goes, "There's something really wrong with the server." I said, "Oh, geez, what's going on?" I go, "Look at it, everything looks fine." I'm like, "What's the situation? Like, what are you getting?" He's like, "Well, the uptime says 2 days." I look at the update schedule. I was like, "Yeah, it went down 2 days ago because we updated it." He's like, "Yeah, but the uptime." He's like, "There's something wrong with the CMOS battery." I'm like, "Something wrong with the CMOS battery? The clock's fine. What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Uptime is the collective uptime of the machine." No, man. No. Uptime is the current consecutive uptime from last power on or restart. Is that what uptime means? I was the co-op. Yeah. I was the intern, effectively. Co-op basically means intern. And when he said it, I was like, wait, maybe I'm an idiot. So I went and asked a colleague and I was like, uptime is just the consecutive, And he's like, oh yeah.
Yep. And I have another story about that too. I had to switch a monitor for someone I was an intern as well doing IT co-op. I switched the monitor for them. Next day I get a call, monitor's not turning on. And I asked, have you pressed the power button? And they said, yeah, I've pressed the power button many times. It's not turning on. I come downstairs, I press the power button, it turns on. Next day, same thing. Monitor's not turning on. Have you pressed the power button? Yeah. I obviously told them where the power button was that one time. So I came down, pressed the power button. They're like, well, it's impossible for me to press the power button. It's not the same as my other monitor. They can't press the button. They can't do it. And there's no rebuttal to that. There's no rebuttal to that as a co-op.
I do have a rebuttal though. I do have a rebuttal though.
No, there's no rebuttal to it as a person that's going to be replacing Notion as well.
Oh, hey, sure, I guess.
Yeah, like if you're Random McGee, that's like a part of the engineering team replacing Notion with a vibe coded application, and stuff isn't exactly as it is, and you don't have the authority to push back on employee Bill, you're going to be dealing with this exact thing. Hey, I have to click 3 pixels below this area that it was in Notion. I can't do that. You're costing me millions of dollars is going to be the argument against you.
Yeah.
I am not joking. That is the reality. So anyone that's replacing these things in a traditional, Fortune 500 company is not going to be replacing them much. If they're going to replace one thing, and they're going to realize it's not worth it, and they're going to just pay the SaaS price as hopefully it starts to become more competitive. And that's it. Small startups, different story. That's a different story. That's not where the most of the money is made on these SaaSes. So I don't think that they're like fully focused on that. But like it is an indicator of like if it's a small startup, there's like 10 people working and they need a Notion alternative, maybe they could code it up themselves. There is some argument there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, because that could be like a cool hackathon project that they do internally anyway. And then people are more willing to usually suffer through some of like the changes, and they're a little bit more adaptable, and it's a little bit easier to deal with 10 people versus
I'll do it
10,000.
for WordPress plugins. Like I'll even tell a client, hey man,
Yeah.
like a more professional UI for this
Mhm.
was $50 a month. So I just made this really quick. Hopefully that's okay, because I didn't want to balloon your budget kind of thing. And 90% of the time, small business, they're like, hell yeah, like I don't want to pay that. Like, you know, I'm down with just having it be a little bit janky. And of course I could spend more time making it nicer, but I don't want to, you know, up their hours, like, because their budget matters. And that's it. Like that's
it.
you know.
Yeah.
So
like,
there's realities, and then the real world that come up like that.
and that's the reality. That's where like the reality is being like different from what the market is reacting to. The market is almost reacting to the startups, whereas like why these companies are still seeing growth in sales. Like again, back to Salesforce. If we go back there, the number is going down. So if we go back to year to date, the number is going down, but the reality is that they actually have posted profits, like big profits over that 1 year period.
Well, they had that one, what was it, $5 billion deal that we mentioned in the beginning as well.
Yeah, the government deal. That's correct. They posted a massive deal with the government. And that's a big deal, but it's not being priced in because not for whatever reason, there is reason for it, but like there is the reason that it's being priced in is because like they're not seeing the growth. So the traditional companies are probably going to continue to use Salesforce. They're not going to all of a sudden switch on a dime to some random vibe coded application. But 5 to 10 years down the line, if there's 10 other competitors of Salesforce, that could affect them, right? And then the new companies that are choosing to use Salesforce or not, like Matt was saying with the mainframe systems, they might choose to build their own version internally, or again, choose a competitor that has less moat now because they are building more rapidly due to AI. So that's where we're seeing the market react to. But the reality of the situation internally in these companies is they're still seeing growth. They're still seeing a ton of usage because nothing's going to shift on a dime. And it's impossible to ask a massive company to vibe code all of their internal applications that all of their users are using, because the upheaval and the uproar that's going to happen inside will cause every engineer in there to quit. So it's a tale of two sides of the coin, but like it's also not like, you know, this is exactly what's happening, and you know, one side is right or the other side is wrong. There is some merit to the stock going down, maybe not as much because again, they're still making a ton of money. So in my opinion, the market is reacting too much. And on the other side, it's like it does have to react to the fact that SaaS needs to adapt.
Well, despite it being a fool's errand to predict the future, I mean, I'll give you a prediction. My prediction is this is going to be similar to website builders and how disruptive they were. Were they disruptive? Yes. Was it apocalyptic? No. And I mean, SaaS, again, had some writing on the wall, had some cracks in it. People were sick of paying for subscriptions. So then new business methods come out. I mean, SaaS was a new business method.
Yep.
SaaS really started when we were in college. There were SaaSes before, and there's certainly SaaSes after, but now almost everyone's a SaaS after. And there comes a point where people are just not going to want to pay per month. And I will say this is, I would assume, and it is definitely an assumption, that more people now are becoming financially literate due to finance content on YouTube and things. Caleb Hammer and stuff, love him or hate him, he has a big show, Financial Audit, as well as several other different podcasts and things that cover business and personal finance and things. And one of the very first things I hear from people that are worried about debt and people going into debt is check your subscriptions and get rid of the ones you don't need. And that's almost like a little mini war, not necessarily groundbreaking or anything, but it's almost like a little mini war against SaaS. And Mike and I pay probably like hundreds of dollars through the business more than we need to because of SaaS, because it's like Well, like if I get rid of the subscription, it's going to go up 50% because I'm on a grandfathered in plan and I use it twice a year. So now what?
Yep. So maybe like, and this is what leads me to my final point here, and something that like kind of a challenge that I'm putting down on myself, I guess, that I'll be doing publicly is I want to pick a couple of subscriptions that we have, or a couple of pieces of software that we have, and I want to see if what people are saying is true. Maybe I can. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna one shot them. That I think is kind of a sensationalist headline, but maybe I can spend, a few hours, let's say, of my time trying to replace them and see if it's replaceable and if it can save us some money. And then I'll come back on the show. Or in fact, what I'll do is, because this episode won't be released for 2 weeks, I think. So it's not next week, the week after that you'll be hearing this. In the show notes, so go to the website, go to the htmlotherthings.com if you're listening to this, and find the show notes for this episode. In the show notes, I'm going to have an update section where I'll either have a statement on, hey, I was able to do this, here's the link, or I'll have a little, demo section, or I'll have a statement on being like, this was bullshit and we weren't able to replace anything. So you'll have an update in that if you're listening to this.
Maybe a web news even or something. Like, just depends on how it goes.
News. Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. There might be a web news for the week of the release of this podcast. I just need to remind myself. But yeah, there's going to be some sort of update either in the show notes or in the web news for this episode.
Cool.
But yeah.
I look forward to it.
But that's it. I think that's it.
That's the episode. I would love to hear from you, the audience, though. Do you think this is, SaaS is the writing's on the wall? Do you think that this is just a blip and, maybe a bit of a correction? Do you think that they're going to start skyrocketing upwards again? What do you think? Are they going to grow slowly? Are they not going to grow? What's going to happen to SaaS? And is it due to AI or not? But if you want to support episodes like this, please do so on Patreon. That's patreon.com/htmlallthethings, and check out the tiers and give that a go. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons: Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And last but not least, we'll give a shout out to Michael Araka, a contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. And remember, you can get up to 20% off a Scrimba Pro plan using our link that's in the show description and in the show notes, with full details on how it works in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review in the platform you're listening to this on, and we are signing off.